and also search engines. So they're obviously the old search engines which have long existed, and Google's trying to expand more into the Web 2.0 world. But I highly recommend checking out this resource. It's called Blitter, and it's by a group of guys called the Trick Database. And what it does is it actually generates searches and ranks them based on how much talk there is about journal articles and so on. So the more activity and discussion there is around articles, the more they get prioritized in the search, and it's actually really, really interesting and a useful way to find topical information. And so this is what I use. I use Twitter, I write on WordPress, and I use a Google Reader RSS feed. I believe these are probably the most useful things. In emergency medicine and EM education, the most robust communities exist on Twitter and on various different blogging platforms. YouTubes and podcasts get used as well, but I believe Twitter is the major portal of entry into the world, and almost everything published or shared in emergency medicine education online is actually accessible through Twitter. Almost everyone who blogs publicizes it on Twitter. You get regular updates if you're on Twitter. If you just decide you want to get involved in this whole business, I recommend getting on Twitter and getting yourself an RSS feed as the two things that are the best way to get into it. So how much time do I have? Because if I've got a bit of time, I'll just show you how I actually do mine.
Oh, you got about half an hour.
Oh, really?
Just
Am I going a bit quicker?
25 minutes if you don't leave time for questions.
I can relax. Okay, cool. Let's see if I can make this work. I'm going to find my mouse again. So I'll just take you through, because I think it's the most useful. I'll just go with my RSS feed. I'll just try and make this just make it a bit smaller. Can people see that?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So you can read that? So what you do is you set up subscription. So you click on this button, subscribe, and you write in the URL of a website. So you type in the URL of a website you want to keep up to here. And every time that website's updated, you get sent a thing telling you that you've got stuff there. So for example, I have this selection of emergency medicine resources. And you can link them all into little groups. So I've got some friends ones too. I've got some medical education things. But basically, this is the sites I regularly keep up with. One that's I guess has some useful stuff through. Let's have a look at some of them. So this is a guy called Graham Walker who runs. He's the writer of MD Calc, which you might know or use. But he does these little sort of clinical vignette things. I'll just find a good one. For example, random things worth looking up. He just does a site on, or a little post on adult pressor dosing. It's happened to be a question he's come across in practice on a given day, and so he publicizes that. Other useful ones are things like, I'll look at that EM literature of note one and see how that works. So I'll talk about that afterwards. So he'll look at papers and basically do little synopsis of them. So you can look at the whole thing on your Google Reader, or you can go to the original site and see it in the site format. But essentially, he writes these little reviews of papers with the link to the paper at the bottom. And I find this just a really useful way to keep up. In terms of other things that I use, this is my Twitter setup. So I write as Drapador Taz, and Drapador basically means climber. I climb a little bit, or have in the past climbed a little bit. And you can link with all sorts of other things and find out what's going on. I'm just trying to see if I can log myself in. Oh no, I need to sign in. Hang on. If this is getting really tedious, just tell me to stop it.
Stop it.
All right, okay. So, for example, I can look at, let's see who's tweeting today. We'll go home. And there's bound to be something. So there'll be, where's my mouse gone again? So Andy Buck, the guy that does that ED exam website, he'll have tweeted on something today. So you can click on that, and you can click on the link. And that should open somewhere. Where's it going to open? So you just drag that across. So he's forwarded this paper, which he thinks is useful, about emergency drugs in the doctor's bag, and this stuff just gets sent directly to you. You see it, you click on it, it's interesting or it's not interesting, you can discard it if you're not interested. And that's how I use it. I basically use Twitter like that. I'm subscribed to a bunch of lists, and I'm subscribed to certain people that produce interesting content. If they start producing boring content, I delete them. And so that in that way you can control what you do and don't expose yourself to. Yes, I'll close all tabs. Hopefully that'll work. Okay, so that's how I use it. I also use this thing called Instacast, which basically immediately downloads updates on podcasts that I subscribe to as well. The most useful stuff, as I said, is Life in the Fast Lane. It's all emergency medicine roads lead there, or perhaps at least all emergency medicine, I'm not sure. The host of other gateways, including my own, which I won't go on about too much, but certainly if you click on my website, you can find almost all of these resources linked off it as well. Not that I'm suggesting you need to go and do that. I'll be checking though, I'll be looking at my stats later on today to see whether anyone actually bothers to look at them. So if you just write that down, that'd be great. So where is all of this going? It's going to be a fair bit shorter than the time we're allotted by the sound of things. I thought I would struggle to get it in, and so I've been rushing a little bit. But in terms of where all this is going, as I've already said, I think the hierarchy of keeping yourself up to date in medicine is changing. I think textbooks are becoming less important. They're still going to exist. They're still going to keep your door open. They're going to look pretty on your shelves. And they'll have information on them that's 10 years out of date from journals where the information is about 5 years out of date. Blogs will sit above that, assess journals, produce content based on people's experiences, and then tweets will publicize what's in blogs. And I believe in order to keep up on all of the research and the textbooks, tweets and blogs are actually a really, really useful tool. And I think this is going to be the future of medical education. There's a group on Twitter, #MedEd, which actually talks about medical education and where it's going. This guy, ED Doc, is a British guy in the UK, as you can see from his name, 4-hour emergency doc. We all know and love that. And interestingly, Michelle Lynn, who's the author of one of the original emergency medicine blogs, Academic Life in Emergency Medicine, on January the 13th was elected to an academic chair of emergency education at UCSF in California, basically largely on the basis of her blog, and that was essentially what was acknowledged in the announcement of her election to that chair, which is kind of the first person to be elected to an academic chair based on something other than standard journal research. It's basically largely based on her blog, and she publishes a comprehensive series of study cards on her blog called Paucis Verbis, which means a few words, which are lovely little clinical vignettes and study guides to common conditions in emergency medicine. Really quite useful. I find them a great study resource. So I believe the future will hold increased recognition of the role of social media in medicine and education, an increasingly dynamic democratization of information led by these kind of pioneers, Michelle Lynn, Mike Cadogan, Cliff Reid, Mel Herbert, a lot of Australians in there. And just as an aside, this was sort of almost an afterthought, but I think the other aspect that's important here is that we actually have an educational responsibility. I don't think we can put our heads in the sand and say, oh, the new generation, they're very, very tech savvy. They actually aren't. They're tech comfortable. They know how to use the medium. They can find stuff. But if we don't take the responsibility to learn how it works as well, we're leaving them comfortable with the technology, but still not having the nous to work out what is and isn't useful when they find it. And so we have to understand this stuff, because future generations of doctors will be so comfortable with it, but we won't be comfortable enough to actually guide them through it. So we need to be comfortable with the medium too. And we possess the experience to guide them in using it. So we owe it to them to know this technology. Otherwise, we lose the opportunity to educate them. So in summary, Web 2.0 and social media are valuable tools. That's all they are. They're tools. They're fantastic, valuable tools. They're not good. They're not evil. They shouldn't be banned. They should be used properly. We should be teaching people how to use them properly, not shutting down access to them. Use them, but don't abuse them. I recommend you join the International Emergency Medicine online community. I found it very beneficial. The educational benefits far outweigh the potential downsides. And, as you can see from my grasp of hardware and software, if I can do it, it must be pretty easy. So I think you should join the revolution and join the conversation. Thank you.